And let's begin. I have a deep passion for the stuff we're doing today. It's come out of some personal pain in my own life and family, and a burden I have. And I'm gonna tell you at the front end. I'm telling you at the front end. This is how many of you been to a marriage conference before? Whoa. Okay, just a handful. All right. This one's different. If you know me, you would expect it to be different, but this is a very different marriage conference. So keep that in mind as we go through this. And I love to laugh. Our family grew up laughing. And if you spend any time with me, we'll probably laugh, but I don't have a lot of really cool jokes, a lot of anecdotes. This is not one of those conferences where the speaker just keeps you roaring with laughter and you go home and your marriage is still a mess. All right, so this is going to be different that way. So let's pray and let's step into this thing. Father, thank you for each couple that's here. I thank you really honestly for carving out time at a crazy time of the year, Lord, for us to gather, and deeply grateful for that. And Father, you said if you utter what is precious and not what is worthless, that you shall be as my mouth. I pray that would be true today. Help me serve you. Help me serve these beloved folks. And Lord, I pray that a difference would be made as a result of this time, not just something checked off the calendar, but there would be the beginning of beauty, the beginning of things that honor you and honestly make us happy, Lord. So be here. We ask you to. We know you're present, but ask that you'd be palpably, visibly present. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, now I mentioned that before that I'm grateful that you're here, and I really am. The fact that you're here is really profound to me for a couple reasons. One of the reasons is that, and I mean, we're going to start out being honest. One of the reasons it's profound that you're here is because marriage is one of our most vulnerable places. And for you to be willing to step into some space where we're going to talk about that, that says something about you. And it really encourages me a lot. You know, I did a little bit of checking, and this is the last basis for genuine research, so I'm telling you that up front. But Google. But it's interesting. You can get some trends on this. And I did a search yesterday and just typed in the word marriage, a specific search on marriage. I got 3 billion hits. 3 billion. I don't know that I've ever got 3 billion anything doing that. There's 10 times as many responses to marriage counselors as there was to financial counselors. And in Amazon's book section, and this is scattered the way they do it, but 60,000 hits or responses just on the whole idea of marriage. All right, it's a big thing in our culture, a huge thing in our culture. All right, people are still interested in it. It's very debated now. Since 2015, the playing field has gotten very, very scattered in terms of the Supreme Court decision. All right. So there's all this interest, there's all these hits, there's all these books, there's all these evidences of marriage counselors, and yet almost half, about 40-some% of marriages in the United States right now involve at least one person that's getting married for the second time. And the divorce rate among believers, people who are professing to have some kind of religious connection, and those who have no profession of any kind of religious faith is about the same. It didn't used to be that. And the one that kind of surprised me, but the more I think about it, it doesn't, is a whole phenomenon that sociologists call gray divorce. Have you heard of this? Any of you heard of this? It's if you check online, you'll get a lot of results for it. Gray divorce is their term for people 50 plus that are getting divorced. All right, how many of you in this room know someone that's 50 or older that's been divorced in the last year? Yeah, half a dozen. All right, yeah, and we're going to talk about. I have some thoughts on that. Why that happens? I think it's not simple, but I think there's some reasons for that. And the rising generation is putting off marriage, not indefinitely, but way off. way off. They're getting married later if they get married at all. All right. And why is this? I mean, and I know I'm painting with a large brush on a small canvas when I say this. All right. This is a very simplistic answer, but I think there's some truth to it. I think part of the reason, and this is where this conference came from, just so you know, part of the reason I think there's either ignorance or just disregard, but I'm pretty sure it's ignorance, not in the pejorative sense. I don't mean it in the pejorative sense, but I mean ignorance in the sense of really not knowing God's design for marriage in the first place, and what's the point of it? What's the point of marriage? Why get married? I mean, have you ever wondered why this is the only human relationship that you have to have a license for? What's different about it? Why would the government be so concerned about it that they wanted to license people to do it? All right? So I think there's a genuine not knowing, an agnosticism, if you want to put it in the truest sense of the word, about the real design and purposes for marriage, okay? I think another reason is that I think there's a mistake that we make in our thinking, and one of them is this. One of them is that sex, which is instinctual, right? Sex is instinctual, it just happens. Sometimes, maybe a lot of times when it ought not to, among people that it ought not to, but sex is instinctual. Marriage is intentional. All right, sex just happens. Good, bad, or indifferent, it just happens. Marriage, in terms of it being what it's supposed to be, doesn't just happen. And there's some reasons for that, all right? So I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding, not ignorance regarding the design and purpose, but also a misunderstanding about the fact that marriage in itself takes more work than just the pleasurable side of it, all right? And we're intentional about a whole lot of things. We are. We're intentional about, how many of you have ever been on a diet? Yeah, and some of you don't want to raise your hand, but I mean, it's insane. It's insane. It would be interesting if someone did a study and just compiled a list of all the different kinds of diets there are. I'm waiting for the donut diet to come out. It hasn't hit yet, but we put in all kinds of time researching, talking to friends, trying to figure out the best way to look the way we want to, all right? We punish our bodies. We walk into supermarkets and our body is crying out to reach out and grab this thing, and we don't, or we flip it over, don't we? Turn it over. Look at the fat grams, look at the calories, and then our mind starts to play games like, well, if I do this, then I can cut back on this, But we punish our bodies in terms of diets, all right? How many of you exercise? Yeah. I mean, we make our bodies angry at us by the things we do to it. I belong to Lifetime Fitness, and I see bodies in there that are mad at their owners. I see people, and I don't know if this could be a mental issue, not an exercise issue, but I see people running in Birmingham like last week. It's 9,000 degrees. You're living in a convection oven, and there's people out there dressed in black, solar collectors out running. Why? Because they really, really believe that running is important. So we are willing. This is the reason I'm getting on this. What's this got to do with marriage? Everything we're talking about today has to do with marriage. And you're going to think I fell off the turnip truck 3 or 4 times as we go through this, but it's actually true. We are willing to push our bodies and do things to our bodies that are painful. We even make T-shirts that say pain is weakness leaving the body, and we wear it to the gym. And yet sometimes when it comes to a topic like this, we don't even think about taking our marriage to the gym. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do this morning. That's what we're going to do today. I want to take your mind and your marriage to the gym. What does that mean? That means that some of the stuff we talk about is going to hurt up here first, all right? And just so you know, this is like a 4-part deal. It's 3/4, 75% of it is way up here. 25% of it is way down here, right? The last session we have together is all nuts and bolts stuff, getting down on the pedestrian level, making this thing walk, all right? Because my desire is not to change your behavior. My desire is to change your thinking, all right? And what's going to happen? It's going to frustrate some of you kind of linear, logical people, all right? This whole thing is going to be a lot like this. I can remember the first time I saw one of these things, I thought this was going to be my pair of glasses. I was really scared, all right? But you've been through an eye exam, right? And it's 1 or 2, 3 or 4. And I think sometimes those guys are a little sadistic. I think they show you the same one over and over and make you think that you should see a difference, you know? That's probably not true, but this conference is going to be like this. It's going to be like getting things are going to be blurry. You're going to wonder, what's this got to do with marriage? And I promise you, if you're paying attention, all right, by the time we get to about 1 o'clock this afternoon, you're going to have the prescription that I really want you to have. That's my burden. That's my vision, okay? That's my vision. And one of the things that really has become important to me has been teaching from the standpoint of addressing what I think is the greatest weakness in Bible teaching. I would say it's the greatest weakness that was in 20 years of my own Bible teaching. I've been doing this for 40 plus. And I think it's true in a lot of church ministries. I think it's true in a lot of Christian organizational teaching. I think it's especially true when it comes to teaching on marriage. And it's this. The idea is that if we give you really, really good content on the pieces, that over time, when you get all the pieces together, you'll have the big picture. You'll get it. And I've come to realize that is absolutely 100% false. That we're doing it wrong. We're teaching from the bottom up. We're teaching what's called inductively, pieces, and then eventually the light's supposed to come on, all right? And I think we need to be teaching from the top down. All right, there's a dozen puzzle pieces on the screen up there that you're looking at. They make absolutely no sense to any of you, possibly to my son because of his knowledge of art history, all right? But those are just random pieces, aren't they? But if they get put in their proper order, all of a sudden, you've got the 17th century Rembrandt that's worth $60 million called Belshazzar's Feast. This is from the book of Daniel. Remember that? They're having this big riotous party, and all of a sudden there's this handwriting on the wall. That's where we got that phrase, by the way, that handwriting's on the wall. It came from the book of Daniel. Now take a look at that. You see the turban on his head? You see the woman on the right that's pouring the wine out of that cup? You see the other people at the table, all right? Now, if I take those pieces and put them back out, you can't quite see the whole picture, but you get something, don't you? You can kind of say, well, that's that. And so the idea here for us, beloved, is that it takes the big pictures to make sense of the pieces. And so we're looking at big picture stuff. I mean, stuff that's so big that it seems like it's outside the world of marriage. And we're going to build this. I'm going to try to lay a huge foundation, not so much huge in size, but huge in depth, a deep foundation. We're going to take a look at what I call 4 life truths, things from the very beginning. And as far as kind of the notes that you're taking, this is kind of where I think your notebooks start out, to be honest. 4 life truths. What do I mean by life truths? Well, something that's true, period, and it's true of marriage, of course, because it's true of everything. It's true of everything, therefore it's got to be true of marriage. The first one is this. It's that disillusion is the child of illusion. Disillusion is the child of illusion. All right, little disclaimer here. Little disclaimer. Or parenthesis. And I'm going to kind of call the men out on this one. I'm not sure where it happened back in history. It had to have been in the Old Testament somewhere. But a precept was set up, probably in some Jewish scroll that's been lost, that wives take all the notes and the husbands just sit. Or maybe it was on the graffiti in the restroom of life someplace. But somewhere we picked up this idea. You're going to need the notebooks to do the follow-up material, each one of you. So please take time to write in them. And I've designed them so that you don't have to do a real lot. You'll know where you are because there's ink behind you and blank spaces ahead of you, so you won't get lost. But disillusion is the child of illusion. What in the world does that mean? It means that oftentimes the things that disappoint us most in the end, we had wrong from the beginning. Oftentimes the things that disappoint us most in the end, we had wrong from the beginning. Think of your first job, whatever your degree was in. You got hired, you were excited, you went into it, and it was not anything that you had expected at all. All right, and the rising generation is having difficulty because someone's told them, I think it was a purple dinosaur, but someone told them that your first job will give you ultimate meaning and purpose. And it doesn't work that way, does it? You can have that experience with a home you bought or a car you bought. That disillusion is the child of illusion. Oftentimes, things that disappoint us most in the end, we just didn't have it right from the beginning. It's especially true, beloved, when it comes to God. I think one of the reasons that there's such a migration of folks, particularly younger folks, from anything religious, particularly the church. Part of it, to be honest, and we need to own this, part of it is because we've painted a terrible caricature of what Jesus is and what the church is and what God's really all about anyway, and you'll get some of that this afternoon. But part of it, too, is I think there's been this illusory understanding of what it means to know Jesus and to have a relationship with him. And if pain and difficulty and suffering enter in, sometimes I'm out. All right? But it's also, this principle right here is also very, very true when it comes to marriage. Matter of fact, I would say that this is one of the leading causes of marital anemia, just not growing, or atrophy, going kind of backwards, or destruction. All right? Just that. Second life truth, is that happiness is the child of met expectations. Happiness is the child of met expectations. What do I mean by that? Well, and this is a little bit of a longer sentence, but it's this idea that the gap between what I think I'll get and what I actually get determines my happiness about what I have or what I end up with. Okay, so what does that look like? Well, here's what it looks like. Is if this is what I think I'm going to get, all right, and this is what I get, I got this little bitty gap here. That means high happiness. The gap between what I think I'll get and what I actually get determines my happiness with what I end up with, all right? If this is what I think I'll get and this is what I get, all right, high level of unhappiness. All right, high level of unhappiness. And this is way beyond the scope of what we're trying to do here this morning, but this is a partial explanation why unbelievers that end up marrying believers. And I've taught this for 30 plus years in different settings, this thing I'm about to share with you. My experience has been that almost the majority, not all, but the majority of what we call a mixed marriage, a believer and an unbeliever, a mixed marriage, the believer's a woman and the unbeliever's a guy. That's been my experience. And there's some reasons for that in terms of hopefulness and nurturing and vision and all that sort of stuff. But you know what happens? Is that the unbeliever's expectations. What does an unbeliever want in a marriage? All right? And you guys are old enough and have been around enough to know there's some amazing, amazing unbelieving people. Kind and compassionate, intelligent, creative. And there's some believers that are just rascals. They just stink it. Everyone in here has been deeply hurt by a Christian. I know that. And you've been deeply blessed by an unbeliever. I know that too. All right, I know that. So an unbeliever, let's say the guy's not evil, wicked, mean, and nasty. He's a really nice, unbelieving person. What's he want? Well, he wants companionship. He wants someone to talk with. He wants someone to do things with socially, recreationally, probably sex, some enjoyment in the bedroom. Wants to maybe raise a family together. Wants someone to love them and be with them. All right? If they marry a Christian woman who's worth something, really, really serious about her faith, he gets that and more, doesn't he? That and more. And she gets less. That's why in a mixed marriage, it's the believing wife or the believing partner that's the least happy or less happy. Because why? Because of this principle. The gap between what I think I get and what I actually get determines my happiness with what I have. The unbeliever got everything. Very happy. The believer did not get what some of the things she wanted. Someone to pray with her. Someone to maybe lead and guide her kids, help her at least, lead and guide her kids spiritually. Someone to help chart a path for their life that's bigger than just where you live, what your zip code is, and the badge on your car. Okay, that's the second one. First one is this idea of disillusion and illusion. The second one has to do with happiness. Third one is this idea that fulfillment comes from following design and not from following desire. Fulfillment comes from following design, not from following desire. Or put another way, when something does what it's designed to do, its purpose is fulfilled. When something does what it's designed to do, its purpose is fulfilled. All right. So what does that mean? Well, that applies to everything from pencils to space shuttles. Pencils to space shuttles. I used to do a little thing in one of my classes that I taught. I'd get up on a stool. I was younger and stupid back in those days, but I'd get up on a stool and I'd put a pencil underneath my foot. And then I'd have a student come up and I told him, I said, the physics, I lied. I said, the physics on this is such that if you do this just right, you can actually lift me up with this pencil. Okay. And they would try, and you could tell they were realizing they were getting to, and all of a sudden, and I'd say, okay, why did this happen? And someone would say, you weigh too much. And I'd say, I weigh too much. Wrong. And they'd go through 3 or 4 explanations, and then finally someone would yell, usually from the back of the room, pencils weren't made for that. And that's the point. When something does what it's designed to do, its purpose is fulfilled. You take something out of its design sphere and use it for something it's not designed to do, it breaks. And sometimes the person using it gets hurt. All right? You see this with, and us guys are masters at this, using screwdrivers for chisels or pry bars or something, you know. I heard a story about 2 neighbors that bought a lawnmower. They shared the cost of the lawnmower, and they were going to use it to trim the hedges between their property. For real. And one guy tripped a little bit and cut off 3 of his fingers. All right? Now, you got to have an IQ the same as your shoe size to do something like this. All right? It's called a what? A lawnmower. It's got wheels on it, but they used it for something it wasn't designed to do. So we're going to spend a whole lot of time trying to understand what is the design of marriage. Because if I have a chance of fulfillment in marriage, I've got to follow a design. Unless it's a choose your own adventure, which we live in a choose your own adventure culture. All right, so that's the third one. The fourth one. All right, now this one, look up here. I'm going to turn this off. Look up here. We're stepping into the kind of, this is, cerebrally, this may be a little hard. So we're going to the gym here a little bit, all right? We just got off the warm-up, and we're going to the weight floor here, okay? I'm just telling you that ahead of time. And I'm also telling you that of all the Noose conferences that I've taught, I've never included this material before. So this is new stuff. Not new to me, but it's new to the conference. And the reason is because I think it's so important. And I've adjusted a lot of the conference around this idea. All right, what is this? What do I mean? Pre-understanding colors our perception. Well, what I bring to everything determines what I think about it. Or put another way, what I bring to everything determines what I take away. And this is a ginormous concept in terms of its importance. All right, we have 7 different churches represented in this room, at least 7. Some of you are unaffiliated, and didn't put anything down. What does that mean? That means that you're coming into this conference with each of you with a whole pile of pre-understanding in terms of your theology. All right, and you've got a pre-understanding based on where you grew up, what your ethnicity is, what your socioeconomic status is, who your friends are, all this sort of stuff colors us. All right, is it bad? No, it's not bad. Can be, but it's not necessarily bad. But this is really true, and I think and it's really going to be important for us to spend some time on this. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to spend probably 20 minutes just talking to you about the things that are coloring our pre-understanding invisibly. Genuinely, this is not conspiratorial, I'm not an alarmist. But just to give you an idea how this works, if you look at this is not a psychological test, all right? But if you look at this, and I'm going to describe to you what you're seeing, all right? Here's what you're seeing. You're seeing 3 white circles. You're looking at an inverted outline of a white triangle. And on top of all of that, on top of those geometric shapes, is a black solid triangle. Do you see that? All right, which is better, 1 or 2? No, you see that? There's a black solid triangle laying on top of these 3 white circles and this white outline of an inverted triangle. The truth is, none of those geometric shapes are there. The 5 geometric shapes that we just discussed, or I just told you that you saw, you agreed with me, you look at them and that's what you see. But if you start taking things away, all right, that was really not a circle. It was just kind of a Pac-Man. Some of you know what that is. Some of you don't. It's back in the day when there was these things called cassette tapes that everyone listened to on music. But so you get rid of that one, you get rid of this other one, okay, and all of a sudden that you begin to realize we never had a white inverted triangle, and you get rid of this one and we realize we never had a black triangle either. So why did you see that? That's pre-understanding. It's the best illustration I can give. Your mind has been trained, even in rudimentary geometry when you were sophomore or if you had it in college, to understand basic geometric shapes. Now, some of you real smarty pants know what dodecahedrons and rhombuses and all that stuff are. I don't. But we basically know circles, triangles, squares, rectangles we can do, trapezoids, that's pushing it. So your mind knows what a circle is. So when your mind looks at that, it says that's a circle. Your mind looks at that and says that's a triangle. Okay? That's pre-understanding. It's what we bring to things, determines what we see, oftentimes what we hear, and ultimately what we conclude.